Christian Hyatt, CEO of Risk 360. Are you ready to jump into the muddy waters that are AI regulation?
Let's do it. Let's go.
Let's do it, my friends. So for those who don't know me, I'm Danny Menimbo, managing partner at Shellman. I lead our ISO and AI services. And Christian is CEO of Risk 360. As I mentioned, they're one of our partners helping our clients get audit ready. So we're living in this world of AI regulation and compliance every day. And just to set the context for what we will be talking about, quick overview of AI regulation, where we are, just big picture trends, what organizations should expect today, as well as 12, 24 months out, what you can do now during this period of uncertainty. I think, Christian, if we did this talk last week, the subject matter might have been different. I think if we do it next week, the subject matter could be different just based on everything that's going on. And then just talk about kind of what consideration should be there when you're talking compliance versus actual regulation. So that said, let's get started with state of regulation. Again, broad brush. I actually didn't prepare you for this, but let's do a quick fire, have a little fun. So this year, 2026, how many of the 50 states do you think have proposed some type of AI bill?
17.
45. So
Dang.
45 states have proposed more than 1,500 AI bills. That actually surpasses all of what happened in 2024. And then you probably can understand where we're going with this theme, but in 2025, how many of the 50 states do you think proposed at least one AI bill?
17. I'm going to go again.
50. All 50 states.
50.
So 145, I believe it was, bills were enacted last year alone. So tons going on, and all that, main kind of themes of what we're seeing with these laws, right? Not all of them are comprehensive in nature. A lot are sector specific, and we'll talk about kind of the difference between those. But certainly algorithmic accountability, Gen AI transparency. You have employment discrimination, deep fakes, right? So they're kind of all over the board in what they're reaching on. All of this on the backdrop of, as we closed out last year, we had President Trump drop that executive order, that EO, which basically is proposing a uniform federal AI called policy framework where, any state laws, it was intended to preempt any state laws that were deemed in conflict or in contrast with, what they were proposing at the federal level, which, I'm in Colorado. There's been a lot of drama around the Colorado AI Act, which we could talk about. The Colorado AI Act, I think, was the one state law named in that executive order as being an example of something that had excessive regulation, but more on that to come. But despite the executive order, we've continued to see states enacting laws, pushing forward with regulation. And I think there's really three main buckets of regulation that we're seeing. We're seeing the comprehensive, broad scope regulation. So think, again, Colorado AI Act, Texas, TRIGA that went into effect earlier this year. We have more the foundation model, the developer focused laws like New York, the RAISE Act, right? That's targeted towards the developers to make sure that they're accounting for and on the hook for harms before they occur, certainly not after. If you think about, who's in scope or who the target audience is for those, it's those large LLM models that you think about, the Google, the Anthropic, XAI, et cetera. And then you have more of these sector specific, very targeted laws. So think NY Local 144, that is what they refer to as those AEDT laws, automated employment decision tools. So if you're using algorithms making hiring decisions, NY Local specifically in New York, you're actually required to, under that specific law, to undergo an annual algorithmic bias audit performed by a third party. That's kind of like the OG of the AEDT laws that came out in 2023, and a lot of other states, I think Illinois is another example, have put out similar algorithmic, bias laws when it comes to using those things for hiring decisions. Others that are sector specific, you got the Utah AI Disclosure Act that got passed in 2024 as well. As basically if you have a chatbot on your website, et cetera, the consumer needs to know that they're communicating with AI and not a human. And then the last one I can think of really that stands out, Tennessee, country music capital, they put out the Elvis Act, right? That is intended to protect musicians and individuals from AI voice cloning. But I think an interesting area to spend a minute discussing is these comprehensive, broad scope laws, which are going to be the ones that are going to impact, majority of our clients, probably folks on this call, right? So, bringing it back to Colorado, I've obviously been paying a lot of attention to that, living out here. We were the bellwether, right? 2024, May of 2024, our governor signed this into law. We were the first state to really put out something comprehensive at the state level. What did it focus on? It focused on high risk AI systems used in consequential decision making. Kind of a mouthful. I mean, what does that mean? Think, automated resume screening, hiring decisions, uh, possibly insurance underwriting, payment models. You could use it for public public assistance to eligibility like SNAP, et cetera. So all of these things, the idea is that the AI would basically materially impact how a human might make a decision as a result.
Yep.
These are all in scope, and it defines obligations for both developers and deployers. It links closely to 42001. In fact, it names 42001 in the law's text because it has obligations around risk management, system impact assessment, consumer obligations and disclosures. So they've actually come out and said that if you have 42001, it'll be a safe harbor. So there's a close linkage there. Where the drama begins, and I want to get your take after I mention this, but where the drama begins with all this is 2024. Our Governor Polis, signs this into law. He said he signed it with I forgot the exact wording that he used, but a lot of reservations. I think something along those lines. So we've started to see a lot of pushback here. I mentioned that Trump's EO kind of put us on blast, and then this thing ends up getting, the implementation date was supposed to be February 1 of this year, gets pushed back to June 30. They were originally supposed to add a lot of exclusions to it in terms of who it applied to and, basically kind of narrow the focus. That ended up getting off the table. All they ended up doing was pushing the implementation deadline back from Feb 1 to June 30. So, and now there's talks that this law may just get axed entirely and replaced with something totally different as we go into 2027, a little lighter weight, et cetera. So, you know what they say about the tallest blade of grass. It's always the first one to get trimmed down.
Yep.
So I think we're facing a lot of political pressure out here. But what do you think? I mean, that's just the U.S. I mean, the EU is likely pushing back their high risk obligation start date. So a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, I think that ambiguity is what a lot of people are struggling with. Like, I think people, generally speaking, want to do the right thing. They want to get ahead of these regulations and these laws. But I think all of this exists in a context, and some of the most important context is that I think the United States is committed to being a leader in AI. So
Yep.
their risk tolerance is very high.
Mhm.
The federal, that includes the federal government, but that also includes the commercial space. I mean, our economy is largely, I won't say propped up, but most of the growth of our economy right now is tied up in AI.
Mhm.
One of the interesting stats that I read recently was we built the federal road system over the course of 36 years, and they spent $630 billion to do it. It was the biggest, national infrastructure project we've ever done. We spent
Right.
$700 billion in 1 year on AI infrastructure. So it's just
Crazy.
AI investment. It's just
Mhm.
unparalleled in scope. So there's like a little bit of, I think, hesitation to slow down because
Mhm.
people see the opportunity, they see the economic impact. The U.S. government, probably for national security reasons and just competitively, want to invest in it. We've seen
Right.
the AI Act that they're putting out. So that kind of
Mhm.
exists in the context of also these states wanting to put some governors on the different companies and what they're doing. Then you look at it globally, and there's kind of like the personality of the EU versus the personality of the US has always been a little different. The EU tends to have a centralized model. We saw that with
Mhm.
GDPR. We're seeing that with the
Yeah.
EU AI Act. And then the US likes to do what they do, which is a mix of state by state laws and then
Mhm.
also some federal laws. So here we sit, as folks trying to implement AI governance strategies and trying to comply with these laws with a whole lot of ambiguity. And I think that's where the solutions come in, where you
Yeah.
and I have been talking about, well, what do you do? What do we do in this
Correct.
interim period of trying to figure out what to do with all that ambiguity?
Well, what do you do? I mean, this is why it's tough for always advise against organizations hinging their compliance programs on a single regulation, right? So if let's just say you were basing everything you're doing from a compliance perspective on the Colorado AI Act. Well, if that gets nixed and totally off the table, you shouldn't just stop AI compliance and governance because there's still obviously risk there, et
Yeah.
cetera. So, I mean, what do you advise companies do in that case? And like I said, all these sliding scales and timelines and scope and applicability, folks don't know
Yeah.
what to do.
I mean, I think there's still some great activity you can do that both enables the business, but also sets you up really well to comply with all these regulations or business to business requirements
Mhm.
that we're seeing. Mine and your, I think, favorite framework, the one we're seeing a lot of traction with is ISO
Yeah,
42001. I think one of the benefits of something like 42001 or even this risk management framework is
right.
there's some great principles like establishing an
Mhm.
AI governance committee and doing risk assessments and things like that. I think that's blocking and tackling that you just can't go wrong by doing. It doesn't matter what regulation you're talking
Correct.
about or what framework you're talking about. You're going to need those things, and arguably more important right now is you need to be in lockstep with the business's objectives. What I'm
Correct.
seeing inside of organizations is that there's a pretty high risk threshold because they want to move fast, they want to bring new products to the market, they want to capture market share, all the things they want, all the advantages they want with AI.
Mhm.
And the biggest blocker often is that there's not really a leadership team to make those decisions, or there's no
Yeah.
framework to ingest the decision and make it
Yeah.
happen. So those principles based approach, like we said, something like 42,001 positions you really nicely to be able to go make those decisions fast. But also when the regulations do start coming, you have that basic infrastructure in place to comply with whatever you need to comply with. Because what we typically see is like every regulation has like some basic governance requirements.
That's
And
right.
then there's some nuances there, whether you're talking about like a consumer protection or some kind of data
Yeah.
governance aspect of it. So that's what we're telling our clients to do. I also think there's going to be I suspect there might be business to business enforcement before there'll be regulatory enforcement, meaning that if you want to sell your AI product to, some big company, they're probably going to have some contractual requirements in there, either for you to achieve official certification, or we're
Mhm.
seeing already just like guidelines around AI use, and you need to, be prepared to speak to that to gain the trust of those customers. So I think any way you slice it, those principles are a good way to go.
Correct. Yeah, you touched on a couple things that I want to dig into. So one of them was, kind of you're getting at supplier, vendor risk management, third party risk management. And the other was, kind of who owns AI governance within an organization. I mean, both great, but I mean, let's start on the third party side. So AI governance, I mean, to me, kind of really got on the map in 2023, right? That was when NIST AI RMF, as you mentioned, got released. 42,001, our favorite, gets released. But even in 2024, we started to see the regulations come online. That was when Colorado got enacted. That was when the EU AI Act came online. Microsoft updates their SSPA program, which is essentially their supplier due diligence program. But it was really the early adopters who were getting certified for 42,001 at that point, not really, kind of market wide expectation. We entered 2025. We're starting to see a lot more. I call them, it's a more educated and informed buyer these days, and a more educated, informed customer, supplier, however you want to refer to it, because they know the types of questions to ask now, because 42,001 has been in circulation for quite some time. And, a lot more organizations are getting certified. And as a result, they have targeted questions to ask you. And it's going to be tough if you're a company advertising AI first, et cetera, which just about every company is these days. If you don't have some type of compliance program to fall back on
Yeah,
when these questions do
absolutely.
get asked.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, I think a couple years ago it was the early adopters. They were
That's
getting
right.
ahead of it. They were trying to get ahead of the market. But I'm seeing it become like a deal breaker in the sales
That's right.
process at this point. There's
Mhm.
some specific industries like legal tech, healthcare tech, where the first call we get is, "Hey, I can't do business with big healthcare system unless I have a story around AI, and my
Yeah.
promise isn't enough. Like I need like some assurance." And 42,001 is really the only player in the game right now in terms of certifications that you can get.
Mhm.
And I think security and privacy kind of set the stage for all of this. Like over the last more than
That's
decade,
right.
You've seen GDPR, you've seen ISO 27001, SOC 2. Every big company spun up third-party risk management programs. So they've become accustomed to this ecosystem of ask for the certification, ask the diligence questionnaires.
That's right.
So now the AI is here, like it's going to happen again. That's the next frontier,
Yeah.
and it will become a business enabler or a business blocker. I literally last week talked to a customer who was pursuing 42001 because their biggest two competitors had 42001,
Yeah.
and they were excluded from deals. And that was fast. Like I was kind of surprised to hear that. I didn't think the market would respond that fast,
Yep.
but I'm seeing it already, and I think more of that to come.
Yeah, absolutely have an example of that. We certified, a large enterprise organization. It was about maybe a week or two later, right after they dropped their press release about it. Their biggest competitor called us and said, "Our CEO says we need to get this now. When can we get started? It's
Yeah.
just we're going to miss out on deals."
And so the big tech companies set the precedent. Like when you see
Hundred
Microsoft
percent
will take their SSP or Amazon starts
correct.
requiring it, or name your big
Mhm.
bank, and then it's
That's right.
like the dominoes
Market
fall and everyone
response.
has to do it. Yep.
hmm Yeah, and you said something interesting there about kind of ownership, et cetera, and how history repeats itself. We saw this in 2018 with GDPR. What do we see all of a sudden? Who's accountable for data protection within an organization? All of a sudden, you saw this DPO role emerge, right? Somebody needed to be that accountable individual within the organization, and I think that is kind of the black sheep within organizations right now. I've been at several conferences these days, and the question that kind of haunts everybody and gives everybody that kind of deer in the headlights look is who owns AI within the organization, right? The CISO might think it's data science might think it's compliance thinks it's an IT problem. So it becomes this hot potato to a degree of, and that's what you can tell when these organizations really haven't invested in compliance and governance around the AI function, or real compliance, right? Because I mean, you get the paperwork type compliance, which is just when you have a compliance manager in a silo writing AI policies. But at that point, it really does no good, because if you are delegated down 2, 3 levels from a CISO or a chief AI officer down to the compliance manager, they're working in a silo. They don't have intentional buy-in from leadership. They're not working cross-functionally, which, as we know, AI is kind of touching all these different business units within an organization. What good is it if you're writing policies in a silo? And that's where governance, I think, can get a bad name of it's just paperwork, et cetera. Well, of course, if it's not actually reflective of what's happening in practice.
Yeah, if it's a compliance program, I'm more than happy to delegate that down, to
Yeah.
someone capable of doing it. But if it's like who gets sued if my agent does something crazy in the healthcare context, well, that's the top ranking official. You're not delegating that down. In an
Mhm.
ideal world, your AI governance is the same as your compliance, but often it is not. And that's some of the conversations we're having internally. It's like as we're forming these governance committees, like no one wants to be part of another committee, especially like an administrative
Yeah.
committee. But AI is interesting in the fact that there's some very strategic decisions being made when it comes to AI adoption. So, like companies want to deploy AI enablement tools inside their organization so people can vibe code, all across the business. That's a strategic decision. Which products do you bring to market? That's a strategic decision, and and that's the committee that's making some of those decisions. Which in this case is also the committee that's charged with compliance. So this is the strongest intersection I've seen quite a while of business enablement and
Mhm.
compliance and risk management, all talking together.
And I think another area where we're seeing companies get, for lack of a better term, kind of stuck in the mud with where to start on AI governance is that they try to boil the ocean. It's like every single use case of AI within an organization needs to be in scope for ISO
Yeah.
42001, or needs to be kind of considered when they're making these big decisions or reporting up to the board. In reality, I mean, that's probably not the case, right? I mean, you got to do some proportional, I guess you call it risk tiering. I mean, what are the use cases of AI, right? If you're using it for more internal productivity, I mean, that's probably not something that you need to spend as much time and resources in. But if it's handling customer data, influencing financial decisions, I mean, those are kind of more of the big ticket items that are going to probably drive where you want to pay the most attention and focus. And what'll, kind of kicking off back to our theme of today, would probably be subject to regulation. So those are the types of conversations when companies don't even know where to begin. of what we usually like. Where are your use cases? What are you most worried about? Where are you getting questions or concerns from your clients about? Because we had a use case as well. We were talking to a financial services company. They spent all this time and money, basically developing these agents, and their their customers don't want to use them at all. They don't trust them. They're like, what do we do? Um, so they needed some type of third party assurance over that.
Yeah, I think doing a risk assessment is kind of a loaded term,
Of
because I
course.
think people are
Yeah.
fatigued about risk assessment. Yes, do it
Yeah.
another risk assessment, but I mean, this is one of those instances when it comes to tiering or use cases, like you kind of have to have a sense for what the heck you're building and why you're building it and the potential impact.
Mhm.
Because if you're taking a product to the market that presents revenue risk, reputational risk, depending on what it's doing. There could be some data security risk versus if you're enabling Copilot for everyone internally. That's a different kind of risk.
Correct.
So you really got to think through that, and there's probably 150 different use cases in between.
Mhm.
And I think that's easy to say, but it's very
Yeah.
hard to do. Someone has to
Mhm.
roll up their sleeves, get inside the organization, and then
Yeah.
assess the business and say, "Hey, this is what we're doing with AI today. This is what we want to do with it tomorrow, and here's how we're going to our hands around it." And I think that's where people are getting stuck in the mud. They're like, "What do
Yeah.
I do? Do I just get a team to go like talk to everybody? Is there a tool that I can
Yeah.
scan and it can inventory everything?" And then you get inaction because you're just like, I don't know if it's worth the
Correct.
effort. But
Mhm.
you do. I mean, right now, just for anyone wondering, you have to just hop in there and start asking around. That's like the
Yeah.
only way to do it at this point, and do the hard work of that.
Yeah, and then I suppose on that, I mean, what does good look like when we start to set up a governance program or a compliance program? Where we always get that, like, where do I even begin? One of the things, like my first response to that is visibility. Like, if you don't know what AI systems are in use within your organization, who owns them, what they're used for, like, do not pass go, straight to jail, basically. Like, you
Yeah.
need to figure that out before you can do anything. But I mean, what do you think? Like, what are some of those initial due diligence, like, foundational items where
Yeah, I
you just
mean,
start?
the typical path for us is, I get a phone call. It's like often a compliance manager, very competent person, and so
Mhm.
I'll start asking them, well, what does your company want to do with AI? Are you bringing
Yeah.
products to the market? And then pretty quickly, they're like not super confident. They have some idea,
Mhm.
but then they're scared to, or not scared, but like they're hesitant to get probably the CTO or something, someone who does know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, so step one is like, we got to get the right people in the room and okay
Correct.
talking about that. And then we do that and we define the use cases. And then the scary question of like, hey, do you guys want to get together periodically and like talk about this? I don't want to use the committee word, but you got to form a
Right.
committee and a
Yeah.
strategy and start talking about it.
Yeah.
And then you get everybody on the same page. They're clear about what to do. And then it's like the next step, the dreaded risk assessment conversation. Let's think about
Mhm.
risk. So it's like really just getting people motivated to take those steps. Cause I think there's been some, uh, maybe it's been tainted over time. Like it's been viewed as such a compliance exercise, or people think they're going to be slowed down by doing this stuff. But
Mhm.
again, it's like it's a elite fundamentals. Like there's no
Totally.
silver bullet here. It's all the stuff that we know we need to be doing. We just got to like
Mhm.
go do the thing. I will say with AI though, like I've never had such a positive interaction with groups of people that
Okay.
are trying to do stuff. Like I
Right.
feel like with SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or security that's been around a while, maybe
Yeah.
there was a little bit of hesitation to do that thing again, do another risk assessment or another
Mhm.
meetings kind of tend to get stale sometimes. But with AI, man, those meetings are
Yeah.
high impact. People are talking about mission critical stuff. They're
Yeah.
excited. It's impactful to the business. So I guess that's my encouragement to go ahead and take that kind of step.
Mhm. Yeah, those impact assessments, which are called out, of course, in the regulations as well, but a core tenet, as you know, of 42,001. I mean, that for me is kind of like the second test. I mentioned the visibility being number one, but being able to perform an impact assessment, it's kind of, we're audit nerds here. I mean, it's cool. Like, it's an actual way of, you're almost doing, maybe risk assessments are traditionally kind of inside organization, outward facing, but it's a outside looking
Yeah.
in perspective, right, of your impacts to the broader world community, however you want to look at it, based on the context. And for I mentioned the Colorado AI Act, it's based on high risk systems. How do you know if you're high risk or
Yeah.
not? If you haven't justified that through this 360-degree impact assessment. So those, can't be understated. Another test I use for kind of determining whether or not governance is fake or real is, maybe it's a little cheesy. I call it the fingerprints test. I like to see, when you're kids, you're dusting off fingerprints to see if people had touched things in criminal investigations. Um, you know, show me an area where AI, your governance program, has impacted or influenced a decision that's been made. That's turned off a feature that's resulted in model retraining. I get real concerned when we hear, "Oh, we did the risk assessment and nothing to note, all good."
Yeah.
So is it no near incidents or near misses, and that gives me a lot of pause of whether that's an effective program. No need to override the system ever. All good. We haven't had any human kind of step in, so those always give me a little pause of if these controls
Oh
are kind
yeah.
of
I can always
really.
tell if someone's in deep because they're talking about like which model
Yeah.
to use for which use cases and nuances in their guardrails and like which model costs the most. And you can kind of just like as an assessor, you can tell pretty quick like if people are thinking deeply about impacts and governance
Mm,
and things like that. You were mentioning the difference between a risk assessment and the impact assessment. That's another really
yeah.
hesitate to use the word fun. But, risk
Yeah.
assessment's the risk to you. The impact assessment is
Yeah.
the risk to like the end
Yeah.
users. And that's been a really interesting thought exercise too to start thinking through like how does this AI or this agent impact society
Mm,
or the individuals using it? And I think I've received very positive feedback so far. People going through that exercise, and I think they have a
right.
lot of value in the thinking exercise.
Yeah, because there's not always technical risk either that we're used to seeing with SOC 2 in 27001. It's like, what does misuse or abuse of our system look like? What are the harms to society that could occur? And that's super different if you're thinking about autonomous vehicles or resume screening, that type of thing, or the ability to get a loan from a bank. So yeah, thinking through that is a cool
I
exercise.
think the word defensible approach, like that's the kind of
That's
legal
right.
term, because we're
Mm,
not living in a world where there's like jurisprudence, there's a bunch of case law, there's a bunch of best
mhm,
practices defined. So really what we're relying on are people thinking critically and documenting the justification for making decisions. And then if scrutinized, you can kind of show your homework to show you've done that. So amongst those principles, what do you do in this state of ambiguity? I think just really
mm,
solid critical thinking is more important now. Maybe in 5 years we'll have like more frameworks, more reference material, but right now we're really just cutting edge, and people have to think through
yeah.
problems.
Where do you think governance is like failing big time, or like where organizations maybe need to flip their line of sight? Like it might be obvious to you that we haven't covered.
I think we're lacking like some of the technical tools to scale governance. So, like,
Mm,
obvious
okay.
things that are missing to me right now is, there's no way to get a handle easily on your AI asset inventory, if you wanna call it
Yeah.
that. Like, because one of the biggest questions I see internally is, I don't know how we're using AI throughout the business. There's no technical way really to get that inventory.
Mhm.
You're seeing some emerge. There's no technical way to, prevent deployment, in all cases. Some of that is emerging, and I know over the next year or 2 that'll probably change, but I've
So
seen some
yeah,
frustration there. Like, they've started the governance, but the how behind it, like, how do you deploy that is
yeah.
lacking a little bit right now. That's probably one of the biggest holes I've seen.
And it goes in hand with shadow AI. It's like, how do you really shut down your employees from using it? You hear organizations, they'll put up guardrails. Employees are still going to want to use, what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, how do you have that constant eye? Really good point. I mean, I think the only thing, and I know we're up on time, is when organizations kind of confuse security posture with AI governance posture, and they'll change a
Yeah.
couple words in an information security policy. It's just a totally different bucket of risk you're
Yeah,
thinking
that's a
about.
great
But
point.
yeah, this is really fun. We're gonna have to do it again. Appreciate everybody attending. Hopefully that was insightful, and we will definitely do this again.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Good day.
See you, Christian.